and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower class and social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one makes countries. Lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower class and social side, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. See the shit, force of bear. Fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one makes countries. Lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. I'm Ron Stevens. I'm your host today for the next 2 hours. The show is called Game On, and you're listening to the show on UCY.tv. Today, I've got an interesting guest coming on, and his name is Murray Rielly. He is a retired lawyer and was called to the bar in '76. And has just recently retired last year. So this is going to be I hope it's a good show. I know it's going to be a good show. And I really appreciate Murray coming on today. Now, as we do the show, please call in. And the call-in number is 1-718-717-8296, or if you're hooked onto my Skype, you can get a hold of me through that. I'm going to ask people to be respectful of Murray today, because I know a lot of people would like to hang all the lawyers. I get that. We're going to try and turn this into a really good, informative show. Now, Murray spent his career doing civil and criminal and real estate law. Now, for the listeners on the show, they all know, or they should know by now, that legal and law aren't exactly the same thing. In fact, they're at opposite ends of the scale. So we're going to try and work our way through this today. I know Murray is he spent his career as a bar lawyer and in the legal realm. And the legal realm is what's caused everybody so much trouble, because in the legal realm, you are a surety for the legal name. And that in itself is a fraud, because you were never informed and you didn't consent to it. Having said that, I do believe that Murray is a man of integrity. And he's also, I think at this point, learning quite a bit. So Murray is a lawyer who spent his career in Ontario. He said that he will take calls, doesn't want to get into the political realm too much, because he's not interested in politics, and I can see that. Most people aren't anymore. Income tax questions, not interested, didn't have anything to do with income tax or anything like that. So if you have questions that you think Murray might be able to answer, feel free to call in. And again, that number is 1-718-717-8296. Or if you're hooked up to me on Skype, you can get in that way. So I'm going to call Murray now and bring him in and see if we can't have an intelligent, not nasty conversation, and hopefully everybody can learn something over the next 2 hours. So we'll give Murray a call here and see if we can't get him in.
Hello.
Hello, Murray.
Yes.
How are you?
Good.
Glad to have you with us today.
Okay.
We've just done an intro here and explained your background a bit to people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, encouraging people to call in if they will, to ask a question with the idea that you're an Ontario lawyer and the provincial laws change across the country, right?
Yes. For certain areas.
Yeah, so they're very similar, but there may be some different nuances in that.
Yes.
Now, I did get a question. Somebody Skyped me in a question, and this is news to me. I have no idea about this. I don't know if you are aware of this or not. I asked the person that put the question in if in fact they had any background on this, but let me see if I can dig this question up here quickly. I might as well ask you while I'm looking for this question. How's retirement?
Well, it's moving along.
Like, are you golfer, fisherman, or?
No. I'm not very athletic. I do a lot of walking and.
Okay. Well, like Kingston's a nice town, right?
Yes.
You're right on the water there.
Yep.
Which is always good. Where did that question? Because I found it really the question kind of shocked me when I saw it this morning. Well, here we are, and the question was: I heard that the truth is no longer an allowed defense in Canadian court cases. Is it true? And if so, how can anyone win a case against a politician or a private corporation who is harmed then by lying? And that is actually an interesting question because
I have no idea what they mean by that.
Yeah, that's what I'm. I think maybe
every witness that goes into a witness box in the trial and most hearings of tribunals and that there's an oath taken at the first to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So I'm not sure what your listener is referring to.
Well, I'm trying to wrap my head around that too. But like there was, I know there's been some court cases on the placement of wind turbines and that in southern Ontario and across the country and around the world, and a lot of these cases where they have documented proof from other engineers and that it's basically. It seems like, I think what I'm trying to say is a lot of people are seeing that when they go to court, especially against these big companies, that what they're doing has been legislated through the parliaments, is that the onus is always given to the large corporations, and basically, regardless, it seems, of what evidence is brought forward by the victim party, it's not allowed into the courts. I think maybe there's a lot of frustration out over that kind of thing. Maybe that has something to do with it.
I mean, it would be difficult for me to say much about that until I heard about a specific situation, because you can have as it were opinions of experts.
Right.
So the expert has an opinion about something, and an opinion is an opinion, which means it's not inevitably always and forever true. So it's an opinion based on what everybody or what that expert understands to be present circumstances. And that may be accepted, but that's not to say that the opinion constitutes an absolute, ironclad, eternal truth. Is this making any sense?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, you could get an opinion in 1500 or 1600 about a certain medical treatment, and that at the time would have been considered truth about what the medical treatment should be, or even lots of scientific matters too. But pitch it ahead 400 or 500 years, and it's found no longer to apply. So, you get into what's an opinion that is current and acceptable against what is a truth that might be considered eternal.
Yeah, I think where the problem is that because the legislature itself, they I spent a lot of time trying to help people with in this wind thing way back when, and while the documents, the engineering documents stated that a wind turbine set any closer than 1,000 meters to a home would have a detrimental effect on the people in the homes. Mm-hmm. And then when the wind company went to the government and said, well, because of the small size of the farms here and the density of the farm, if we put them at 1,000 meters or more, like the engineering says we should, mm-hmm. then it won't become cost effective for us. So that let us just deal with it ourselves, mm-hmm. and we'll come up with a formula of metering sound in that. And so the government just turned around and said, well, okay, you do that. So then all of a sudden, even though the engineers stated that anything less than 1,000 meters is going to be detrimental to the people in the homes, the government went to the wind company and said, okay, you run your own deal. And so now they ended up putting them in as close as 350 meters to the homes and run a lot of people up. But when the people tried to get redress for this situation, it was absolutely shut out of the courts. I think maybe that's what they're talking about. It's not really, we have the actual experts that are involved in stating this, and then to appease the companies. And they go about this also with that, which I find a most detrimental piece of work that they use, which is the precautionary principle.
Yeah, I'm sorry, which one?
The precautionary principle. And WHO and all that stuff. But basically what it says, see, down in Kingston, somebody was telling me they built a fence there. It cost quite a bit of money to protect turtles along a roadway, and then had a turtle crossing in there. And that's a precautionary principle. We have to build this fence to protect the turtle, even though there's no evidence that this fence will protect the turtle. The precautionary principle as far as renewable energy goes something like this, that even though we don't have any solid evidence that there's any such thing as global warming caused by man's activities, even though we have no evidence whatsoever, to be a precautionary principle, we'll go ahead and try to stop it by using wind turbines and solar panels and all that kind of stuff, solve a problem that we have no evidence actually exists. But then when the people who are being harmed, and I do believe law is all about harm, right? So when the people are actually being harmed by these things being too close, placed too close to the house, they use a precautionary principle in reverse, that you don't matter because you're saving the planet. kind of thing. So that's basically how the precautionary principle, they use it to their advantage on both sides, and it leaves a lot of victims in its wake. And I think that's a big problem for people in the courts now, because they use that as well, your problem doesn't exist, even though it does exist, because we have a bigger problem to deal with, even though we don't have any evidence the bigger problem even exists. Your problem does exist. We see that. You've been run out of home. But we have a bigger plan here, and that's just the planet. So that precautionary principle is a very double-edged, dangerous
I'm just wondering on what its status is. I mean, is it Section 92 of some particular act, or is it just a general idea that a lot of people seem to think that both sides seem to be is a good idea?
Well, I would ask.
I mean, that's before I get into too much discussion on it, I have to find out, because you say both sides try to use it. So if they both try to use it, I don't know if that's because they find it convenient or advantageous, or if it's actually, if somebody can point to a like Rule 19 of the Civil Procedure Book and say that's the precautionary principle. I can understand why it may be considered to be applicable, but I don't know if it's a question of absolute legislation or if it's a question of sort of common sense, seat of the pants interpretation.
Yeah, well, I would, if Kathy, if you're listening, you are the expert as far as I'm concerned on the precautionary principles. So I know you're listening today. So if you can, bring something forward for Murray that is written down either in legislation or law or whatever, or as an act, please fire it into Skype so that we can get that information. No, the precautionary principle, that's what they use for the smoking ban. That's what they use for shutting down the coal plants. And it's about driving an agenda. So they use the idea that I remember years ago they were when they were really ramping up to shut the coal plants down, they were coming up with this data which had nothing to back it other than the media stories that 1,600 plus people die every year in Ontario because of the emissions from the coal plants. Well, they have no evidence whatsoever of that. I've never heard of anybody being tagged at death that their death was caused by emissions from the coal plant. But this is the data. But then they use the precautionary principle again, that this is why we need to shut down the coal plants. Again, we don't have any evidence, but we've come up with this conclusion that's not based on any evidence, and that's why we have to shut down for the safety of the people, and we have to put up the renewable energy in order to save the planet. Even though when I was talking to the senior policy advisor for the Ministry of Energy about this whole scenario that was going on, he kind of, he and I both knew that by putting the scrubbers on the coal plants, they would have cut the emissions to basically nothing coming out of the plants. The only thing they couldn't stop coming out of the plants was CO2. Well, CO2 is the gas they labeled as causing all the trouble on the planet, and therefore that's why they couldn't put the scrubbers on the plants. But then that same policy advisor explained to me that because the wind is not a stable generator of electricity, they have to have some sort of a backup system, something that they can ramp up and down, which was the coal plants. So by taking the coal plants out, they replaced it with the gas plants. And this is where this gets weird, because they said they had to shut the coal plants down in order to save people from the emissions of the coal plants. But then the senior policy advisor explained to me that the emissions coming from the gas plants are more harmful to human health than were the emissions from the coal plants. And his explanation was that the emissions from the gas plants, they create a lot of ground level ozone, and that the particulate coming from the gas plants is extremely fine and is much harder for the human body to deal with than what the emissions from the coal plants, which I found rather, that was news to me. So what we end up with is all of this stuff being done on this precautionary principle with no evidence, and then when people bring forward solid evidence as to the harm that's being done to them by putting these windmills too close to them and that, it's just not even acknowledged, right? You get things from both government health agencies and from the wind companies and from the media saying that, you're complaining because, well, you don't like the look of them, right? Or you're complaining because you're a nutcase, which is not true at all. I spent a lot of years filming this stuff and working with people, and it's been absolutely devastating to their lives. I know whole communities have moved because they can't be there anymore. I know people have had to shut their farms down because their cows are bleeding out their noses, and the all kinds of documented hard evidence as to the negative effects, but it's not accepted. Even though they accept when they're trying to push their programs through, that their programs that are being pushed through based on no evidence whatsoever take precedence over hard evidence, and that's very unfortunate. And so that's the precautionary principle. Everybody should look into it a lot closer because there's a lot of manipulation going on with that, and it seems to be benefiting extremely large companies hooked to the government versus the individual. And I could be wrong, Murray, but just to get back to brass tacks here, my understanding of law is the absence of harm. Basic law would state that if you harm someone, then you have obviously created a problem, and it has to be rectified, and that to me is law. And then we moved over to the legal side, and that's where it gets tricky, right? Because it's all legislated stuff, So the criminal law in that makes perfect sense. If you have caused someone harm, then you've broken the law, and you've created a victim, and the victim needs to have restoration. That makes perfect sense. But it seems like the law now is being used as a manipulative tool, and it's not. It's gotten very murky, if you will, about what constitutes real law and what is being used for. You were in the courts for a long time. We were in court last year. Did a 3-day trial. We should have never been charged with anything. And yet we were treated extremely poorly, assaulted and thrown out, thrown in, and whatnot. And in the end, the charges, we told them that they didn't have any chance in any hope of getting a conviction on, that they can't move forward on them. And what they did was they took the Crown Attorney and transferred the Crown Attorney out of the area, took us to court, spent 3 days in court, and this was over 14 months. We finally got a three-day trial, but it was 14 months in and out of court getting to it. And at the end, they never even brought those charges forward. And not long after that trial was over, that same Crown that we told you are liable if you bring this forward because you don't have any evidence, and you can't bring something into court without any evidence, or at least a better than average chance of conviction. That's the duty of the Crown, to look into this, and if they don't see a conviction there or a very good opportunity for conviction, they have to not bring it forward. And I found it rather appalling that shortly after that trial was over, that Crown was brought back. So they vacated the Crown when we explained it to her, and then right after that, she's back in business again, back in the same courthouse. So I don't know. I was in court a couple times when I was a teenager for stupid little things that didn't really matter, absolutely nothing serious, just kids having fun, and so I hadn't been near a court in a long time. And what I saw in the court this time scared me. It didn't scare me so much as I was appalled by it, the way the people were being treated in the courts. While we were in the court, there's a law. One of the people that were involved in that court case brought up something, and the judge basically said that there's a law. I don't know if it's 202 or I don't have the number in front of me, but basically they have a law that they don't have to acknowledge any of the law. Are you aware of that one?
That would be a surprising law. I don't know where it exists.
The which?
It would be a surprising law. If there's a law that says the judges don't have to pay any attention to the law.
There is that law. It's on the book.
Well, where is it? What is it? Where do I find it?
Just a second. Just bear with me one second. Go find Art. He's what? Just go ask him. Knock on the door and ask him what law that is. That negates the law. Just go ask him that real quick. He'll give it to me really quickly. No, the judge actually said that in the court, that they didn't have to listen to our defenses because they could just negate everything. That was a shock to me.
That's why I want to find out what it says.
Yeah, she's gonna run up, and he's visiting here right now, and he's in my other house. So,
I mean, you know, even just to use a very silly example, if you're sitting in a courtroom in Sudbury, or if a person is in a courtroom in Sudbury, and whatever they're discussing with the judge or the court, I don't know. We don't have to worry about it. But one of the participants in the discussion says, "But I have a law here that says this, that, and the other thing," and then somebody looks at it and says, "Oh, that's the law of North Dakota." Well, then this is perfectly okay. But that's why I'm trying to find out what this person is referring to, because if a judge, in the case of somebody bringing ahead a statement from North Dakota, and I mean it may be perfectly applicable and proper for North Dakota, but it doesn't apply in Sudbury, the judge is perfectly sensible in saying that law doesn't apply here. I don't have to read it. I don't have to deal with it.
Well, I understand that completely.
Yes. So what I'm trying to do is nail down and find out what this principle is that the person you're talking to or with uses to establish the principle that the law does not have to read the law.
Just ask him that. My guest is sleeping. I have to get him woke up. My wife is going, "Well, you want me to wake him up?" Yes, I do.
Give him time to wake up so he gives you an appropriate answer.
Well, he has this stuff pretty well nailed in his head. He'll just rattle it off. But we went to court, and my brother-in-law came to court with me the last time, and he thought I was exaggerating what was going on in the courts.
Okay.
And so we went to the court, and we came, long before we left the courts. But when we came home, he said, you cannot, I can't even explain it to people. They have to see it, what's going on in this court. Now, we're this is the Walkerton Courthouse in Bruce County.
Yeah.
It's a very small courthouse. But these guys they're just over the top. It's like they do what they want when they want. We were brought to court, tried to ask a simple question, were thrown out of court. There was a woman in the court that wanted to speak to me. I went to go back into the courthouse, and then the police said that if I went back upstairs, I would be charged with trespass. I'm thinking, what is going on here?
I mean, this is all. These are all situations that I can't comment on because I understand what you're saying, but I can't make any comment until I find out more about what may or may not have taken place.
Yeah, I think he's awake now. Yeah, that's what happened in the court there, anyway. So. You know, the other thing, I was talking to the head security guy for the Attorney General's office, and you know, he agreed when asked, "Do you need a driver's license in Ontario?" And his answer was no.
Need a driver's license to do what?
To drive a vehicle.
I'm not sure what he means.
Well, you know, people get pulled over constantly.
Yes.
For, you know, I know of several people who have had their licenses suspended without their knowledge for one thing or another, either child support or whatever, and not notified about it, and then they're walking, and one you wouldn't think has anything to do with the other. So they're making more ways to take people's licenses away. But according in the conversation with the head of security, who was working with Fantino, and which I don't know is a good thing or a bad thing, but it was spent years with the Toronto Police Force, stated specifically, you don't need a driver's license. And I find that rather appalling because if either you do or you don't, right? And when I have someone from the Attorney General's office who spent years in the police force saying you don't, we need to get to the bottom of all of this stuff. And again, I don't know. I mean, I talked to an awful pile of people on these shows and that, and I haven't met anybody yet that's against law. Right? Everybody understands law is you know, produce me a victim, and it seems that most of the charges that are being laid on people in this province are for victimless crimes. And I read a report one time, Murray, that the numbers worked out so that in every 3 years there's enough charges laid in Ontario to equal every single man, woman, and child in this province has received a ticket. And that's craziness.
There are...
that means that everybody in this province is some kind of a criminal.
Well, that's... I don't know if they'd all be criminal charges, but... I mean, do they call, long weeds in your front lawn, you get charged with letting the weeds in your front lawn grow? Is that a charge? Well,
that's what I'm saying. These are all these criminal crimes.
Okay, but I mean that's not a criminal.
No, it's not criminal, but it's still an offense, right?
Yes.
And it's really not law. It's a social engineering sort of law. Where we've determined that your grass is too long, and therefore you don't have the opportunity to decide the length of your grass. We did. And we have the authority to either come and cut your grass and charge you for the time, or give you a ticket for not cutting your grass.
I mean, usually that would result from a bylaw that says that.
Right.
It's not just somebody looking at your lawn and saying, I don't like the length of your grass. It's somebody who says, well, the bylaw says that here's the rules on grass, and the reason that these places pass bylaws, of course, is up to the township or the city or the town or whatever that passes the bylaw. But there's something there they can read anyway, whether...
Well, okay. Well, let's take distracted driving for a second then.
Yeah.
Okay, this was legislated. So it's province-wide, and it is a crime without a defense, because it's all of this stuff. Having talked to different agencies of the government and police forces and that, everything the police do, other than a real crime, is at their discretion. There's so many discretionary crimes out there, and speeding is one of them, but this distracted driving, an officer pulls someone over and says, I was watching you, and my feeling, my opinion, is that you were driving while distracted. And so now you go to court and you say, well, I wasn't distracted. Well, the officer says you were, therefore you were. There's no defense for it. It's a money-making machine. Now, one would, I guess, the best defense for, and I would like somebody to use this in court someday. I think the best defense for distracted driving would be that I wasn't distracted, but obviously the officer was, because he was watching me, not the road. Therefore, he was the one who was distracted.
Yeah.
I would think that would be a sensible defense for all this distracted driving thing. But this is what we're seeing. And I know that over the years, even from '76, when you went to the bar or called the bar, the laws have changed a lot. I used to be able to walk down the street with a gun. Years ago, when I was a teenager, we'd throw guns in the back of pickup trucks. I mean, my school had a gun range in it. I mean, nothing was locked up. There was ammunition laying all over the place. Nobody was out shooting anybody. And so those, they keep, I guess, looking for ways to tighten down the public, if you will. With all of these, it's like the legislature is there for one specific reason, and that is to write law, as they call it. And so my thought process is that we should only have the legislature sit for 2 weeks a year, because they ain't got time to write a whole bunch of dumbass laws. The rules. We had a gentleman here who he had a contract with the municipality for plowing, and so he had a farm and he has a shop out there. So he changed his oil out there, and ended up with a $35,000 fine, an environmental charge or something. Lost the contract because he didn't change the oil in the specific location, even though he's been running trucks for ever. So he got nailed with this environmental charge. And I think more than anything right now is what I find most worrisome is the environmental law that's being brought forward. I find that to be a very dangerous, insidious thing, because, again, it's built on the precautionary principle. It's not built on fact. It's not built on evidence. It's laws that are put forward that if you should spill one drop of oil on a gravel, that you have destroyed the environment, and therefore here's your $35,000 ticket. And there's really no, I mean, the way they write it, there's no defense to this. And they're ruining people's lives. Again, there was no victim. So I don't know how much you know about the environmental law, but I mean,
very little.
Yeah, they're cranking this out. They are training lawyers now as fast as they can for international, and it's based on the international situation, cranking out environmental lawyers like it's going out of style, which is another worrisome thing. So
environmental law, of course, it's if I take a shotgun or something and blow your foot off,
well, that would irritate me.
Oh yeah, that would irritate you. But all I'm getting at is that's so-called criminal law,
right? And
so I got the shotgun. You're missing a foot, and that's a criminal law area. It's not easy. It's not pleasant, and it can become complicated. But it's very localized, because wherever you're standing, the law says don't blow the guy's foot off. So fine. Now with the environmental law, one of the problems there is that you've got something happens. I mean, wherever we were standing, and I blew your foot off, let's go back to some other time and we're standing in the same spot, but there's an event takes place which may have a bad effect on the environment. Well, all of a sudden you've got to worry about the township law, the provincial law, the federal law, and probably international law, and God only knows how many independent inquiries and groups there are that may wish to take offense or object to whatever it was that took place on that spot. So it's a very, very complicated area because of the range of the possible bad effect of environmental problems.
But that's the problem right there. If you blow my foot off with a shotgun, and that'll leave a hell of a mess, and I'd limp forever. But beside that I am the victim. Okay, you are the perpetrator. This is pretty cut and dried. You have caused me harm, and therefore you must pay whatever price for that harm. Yeah. That's cut and dried. Okay, it's very simple to understand, and that to me is law. When we get into this quasi law, I call it, because it really isn't law. The legal system itself is not really based on law. It's based on legislated law, which is really nothing more than a bylaw. And it's given the color of law, which states specifically similar to, like, but not, and the force of law. Now, if they took the force of law out of the legislated law, very few people would pay any attention to it because nobody was harmed. And I had that conversation with a lawyer from the Attorney General's office about law, and I had it with someone from the Law Society as well, the difference between legal and law. And the lawyer from the Attorney General's office, he started with, can we just qualify law? And that didn't take long at all, which was basically, if there's no victim, then obviously there's been no crime. And he agreed with that. And so then I said, well, let's go to the legal side. And, can you give me one instance of something that was passed through the legislature and given the color of law and the force of law that in fact didn't cause harm? And we agreed in the beginning that to cause harm was against the law. And, he thought about it for a long time, and he couldn't come up with anything that was ever passed through the legislature, given the color of law, that in fact did not harm people. Okay, either by taking their God-given rights away from them, or watering them down, or taking their labor from them from fees and regulations and all this kind of stuff. This is all causing harm to people. And it's designed to cause harm to people because when you go back in history, it's really just the tax system. It goes way back to medieval England, and I was really shocked when I was talking to the Attorney General's office again, and the Premier's office, and the Lieutenant Governor's office, that in fact all of the politicians, all of the police, and all of the judges are all, in fact, employees of the Queen. That really kind of shocked me. And then we have this thing that, the Queen took the oath to uphold the law as per the King James Bible, but on the other side, the Queen is also at the apex of the political and legal systems. So, one is law and one is business. And everything that comes through that legislative process is nothing more than Crown law, okay, which is business. So the legal system is a system of business, pretending to be law by passing bylaws at the provincial and federal levels, and again at the
well, I mean,
local levels.
Business or taxes, that's certainly a part of the law. I don't know if that's the only thing they worry about.
Well, but they because it's like affairs. You have domestic affairs and foreign affairs and current affairs, and the word affairs means business.
Well,
okay, so they're just doing.
You can have an affair with somebody that's not business.
Well, Bill Cosby did, but he's in trouble for that now. Just kidding.
Yes. Yeah,
let's see. Now he says. Now see. His defense is he's not a perperator. I'm not worried about Bill Cosby. I know. I'm trying
to. I do not disagree that the legal system has an element of taxation or trying to get money to keep the government for whatever good they do operating. But that's not the only area that the law worries about. I can't see that.
No, but it's when they move to the legal system from the law system.
How do you do that?
Well, law is, I mean, if you go back to the Queen, the law, and if you go to our Constitution, and the preamble on it is that it's the law of God. And you know, or you go into the scriptures, it says, "Do not add to the law." So, I went through it with a lot of people in the government, and I said when I follow the history back, that Canada was set up identical to the East India Company, and it was just a bunch of investors, and the Queen or the Crown, King, whoever was in business at the time, simply the way they used to do this, that they would finance an exploration, and they would go out and map it and bring back the maps.
Yeah, but I'm not disagreeing that there's this element of business or taxation or gathering funds. All I'm suggesting is that the law is more than that.
How so?
Well, I mean, in Ottawa now, if anybody visits the Canadian Museum of History, they've got a copy there of the 1215. That's 800 years ago, Magna Carta. And while that thing has been around for 800 years. It's provided principles for a lot of governments around the world, the UK, Canada, the United States, and a lot of Commonwealth countries and countries outside the Commonwealth also. And I don't know, I'm not commenting on the taxation or the business aspects of it, but there are things in the Magna Carta from 800 years ago that have absolutely no sense or no applicability, very little then and absolutely none today. But there's other things that have been there that were solidified 800 years ago and remain, that have nothing to do with business and trying to gouge money out of the taxpayers, such as what's known as habeas corpus.
Yeah,
the principle that the police cannot, or the authorities, the government cannot simply come along and decide they don't like the color of your eyes, so they put you in a box somewhere and say, well, we'll be back someday.
Well,
that's all I'm getting at. That you're focusing on the law as a taxation, mean-spirited, money-grubbing system for the government, and that may or may not be true, but that's not the only thing that's there.
No, I understand that.
Good.
But it's like they've taken two entities and tried to mix them together. Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
What are the two entities?
Well, one entity is law, and the other entity is legal. They're not the same animal. And the Law Society finally agreed on that. So we were talking about maybe this is okay. We'll try this. We were talking about justices in POA courts, and I said, you have on your site here that because I thought everybody was a judge. I really did. I thought people were judges in courts. I thought that's what the court was about. Yeah, this is a judge. But I found out that we have these justices, and my understanding was that some of them were not judges. And so when I was talking to the Law Society, I said, how is it that these are not lawyers. And he said, none of them are lawyers. Well, it says here on your website, on the Law Society website, that it's illegal to practice law without a license. And you're saying that these justices sitting in the POA courts are not judges. So they're not licensed, so they can't practice law. So
they're not practicing law.
That's the whole point. Okay, that's the whole point. Now, you know this a lot better than I do.
They're applying the law.
This is all discovery.
A justice in that sense is something that goes back hundreds of years. They never were lawyers. They weren't.
Yes, but
lawyers.
It says that you can't practice law without a license.
Yeah, but they're not practicing law.
I get that.
Okay, so what's wrong with it?
Well, then if you're not practicing law, then obviously I didn't break a law. Okay? Well, if a policeman gives me a ticket on the road and I go to a PO court, and the one sitting there is not a judge or is not licensed to practice law, then obviously he's not practicing law.
In fact, if you become a judge, you have to give up your license to practice law. Practice law means make a business of it. It's like being a house painter. Judges are not allowed to be lawyers. A justice of the peace is not a lawyer.
No, but he's also not practicing law.
Well, I don't understand. Why do you say he's practicing law? He's applying the law. He's not practicing in the sense that a lawyer practices.
Well, he can't adjudicate law. Okay, he doesn't have the capacity to adjudicate law.
Why not?
Because that's what the Law Society says.
Well,
okay?
Once again, I'd like to find a member of the Law Society that would support that. Can you identify who that member is?
Well, I would have to call back there. We had a very conversation on it.
But I mean, these are very strange statements. They could well be true, but they make no sense to me.
Well, none of this made any sense to me either, Murray, until I started.
No, but I'm trying to find out why it is that you're saying that a justice of the peace is practicing law.
Well, they said you cannot practice law without a license. Okay.
The Law Society would tell you that because, and as far as I understand, that's completely accurate. Because if you're going to set up shop in the province of Ontario, and you're going to tell the general public, I am a lawyer. I can give you legal advice, and you're held in confidence when you explain your problem to me. That's practicing law. A JP does not practice law.
Right. And they can't adjudicate law.
Why not?
Well, that's what the Law Society says, and that's also
that's the part I'd be interested in. What member of the Law Society said that a JP is not allowed to adjudicate law?
I would have to go way back and look up his name, and that will take me days. But I will get. I will get it and forward it to you for sure.
Yes.
Because it seems to me that there's an awful lot of confusion in the courts. When I phoned, the guy from the Law Society, because I said, if you look at your statement here, it says it's illegal to practice law. Now, if that was a true statement, but if it was a true statement, it would say it's unlawful to practice law. Okay, that would be a true statement. To say it's illegal to practice law, they're not the same entity at all. They're not, legal and law are not the same entities. So it's a
but one is what you can read and what you can figure out. The other is general philosophy. Is that what you mean? I'm not sure what the difference is you're talking about.
I'm talking about the meaning of the words. You have two words.
Okay, tell me the meaning of the two words then.
Well, you have two words that mean they have nothing in common with each other.
Tell me what they each mean.
Well, legal, the legal is corporate law. Okay, and law, okay, is the do no harm law. Okay, that's law. The legal side is corporate. Okay, it's all.
Well, why is the speed limit then? Where's that fit?
If you go through the Constitution, the Constitution preamble is that the law of God is supreme, or to that effect. I don't remember the exact words. And that and then Section 32 and 52 says that it only applies to government. Okay, now, and that's all the legal stuff. Now, the all of the members of Parliament, you cannot be, my thing, and I've run in a few elections, and the deal is that I can't represent anybody here. You know, if I get 100% of the vote, I can't represent any of those people that voted for me. None of them. Because when I'm elected, I take an oath of loyalty to the Queen. Okay? And the Queen, I love the way they write this stuff. The Queen, while the Queen and the Crown are separate entities, they're also indivisible. And that brings us to the legal part of this, which is that our legal names are not our names. It's a corporate function of which we, without consent, are made surety for. I and you and anybody else listening, I cannot go buy a piece of property. I cannot go buy a car. Okay, my legal entity can go buy the car. The man who that's the basis of law. A man cannot be in commerce in this province or this country. Only the legal entity can be, and that is a corporate entity that was created by the Crown. So I and you can have no commercial goings on at all. Only our legal paperwork can, which is not you and which is not me. But when we enter into these contracts, obviously the entity is not real, it's a fiction, and only it can enter in to the corporate system. But because it's just a piece of paper, it can't pay for anything. So it's the same as the Queen. The Queen and the Crown are separate entities, but indivisible. And you and your legal title are separate entities, but made indivisible. One cannot operate without the other. And it's all corporate. And so that's corporate law. And when we vote, we are basically voting as a proxy vote on a corporate vote. And I went through this with the municipal affairs and housing, who are in charge of the voting. And I said, it says here that only persons can register to vote, and a person is a legal entity. But a legal entity can't do anything because it's just a chunk of paper. And so the way you have this set up, you say that only a legal entity can register to vote, but further down you say corporations can't vote, which means that everyone on the voters list can't vote. Now, I was actually talking to the office in Kingston, and the lady there said that I was right, that only legal persons can register to vote. But I said, here it says legal persons or corporations can't vote, and if you go over to the Municipal Act, it says that all inhabitants of the municipality are incorporated and they make up the corporate body. So there's no question about that, but this lady in Kingston really blew me away. She said, I am correct on that, but, she says, the one who actually marks the ballot is a different kind of person. And this is the problem that we have with the legal system. When you go to court, They're not taking you to court. They can't give you a ticket. They can give the legal entity the ticket, but the legal entity obviously can't speak. It can't reach in its back pocket and pull out money or a checkbook. Okay? It can't do it. But they tagged you, made you indivisible to this legal entity, and you become the surety for the legal entity. As in, a driver's license can't drive a car. The driver's license is property of the Crown. It's not your driver's license. It belongs to the Crown. It was created by the Crown. And it's just another legal fiction piece of paper. Now, they say, well, you can't drive because you don't have a license. Well, wait a minute. Let's put that into perspective. If I want to go to the corner store and I put my license on the driver's seat and say, go to the store and get me some milk, I'm going to be a long time waiting for the milk because the license has no capacity whatsoever to move that vehicle down to the store and back. Has no capacity whatsoever. But I can't go get the milk unless I have this license. One has nothing to do with the other than that they have, like the Queen Elizabeth is a woman, and she is at the apex of the political and legal system. She is the Crown. Even though they are completely separate entities, they are also indivisible. And that's what the legal system is. It has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with law. If it was law, then I don't need a license because I have the capacity to move myself from A to B. Now, should I cause harm on the way, i.e. run over some kid on a bicycle, and it wasn't the kid's fault, then I must be held accountable for the harm that I've done. That's law. The other is not law. It's corporate law, which in fact is...
Why is corporate law not law?
Well, it's a corporate system. Now, when I spent years, Murray, looking for where the word legal came from, and I had a really hard time with
Lex legis.
What?
It's from Latin.
Well, actually,
lex is the main. legis is the secondary form. Legal comes from the Latin word for law.
Well, actually,
or I mean, I shouldn't say that. Lex is the Latin term that eventually generated into the English term law or legal.
Right. Well, law.
I don't know. I don't know if Latin has a different term for law and legal. I don't know that.
Well, I went through this for years, and when you're trying to separate law from legal, because they are different entities, it wasn't until I got looking at the oaths, and it was the oath of loyalty. And when I put the word in Old Webster's and in etymology, when I put the word loyal in, the word legal popped up. And that's exactly where the word legal came from. It came from the word loyal. That makes a hell of a lot of sense.
I don't agree with Webster on that one, man.
Well, I don't know who Webster was, right? I know they did dictionaries on that.
Well, it's
the same thing. We this is a problem we have when we're trying to search this stuff out. Is that
well? Let me just. Are you saying that legal, the word legal and the word law have no connection whatsoever with each other?
What? Yes, basically.
Okay,
legal is by definition.
No law is legal.
Say it again.
No law is legal.
Meaning?
The Family Law Act is not legal. Is that right?
The Family Law
Act
is not legal.
Is that correct?
Well, the family law is legal,
okay,
but it's not law.
The family law is not law.
No, it's legal. Family law is legal. It's not law. Okay, again,
So
because
what's
legal
the
and law are
difference
not the
between
same
something
term.
between family law and law?
Well, family law is based again
Tell me.
on the
Don't use the word law. Don't use the word legal. Tell me how they're different.
Well, again, if I hurt my child or my wife and I've caused harm to either of them, then I have broken the law. Okay? The legal part of it is the corporate side of it, where the wife, the child, the husband, whoever's in that family, okay, have been deemed to be a legal entity, okay, which only the legal system can get at. The law system cannot get at a legal entity because it has nothing to do with one another. The legal entity.
I don't understand this. It's going to take me weeks to figure this one out.
Well, yeah, we'll leave that alone for now because I think this is when I went through this with the guy at the Law Society, we went through this for a while, and he said, "How do you think like this?" So I said, "I learned to ask questions long time to try to find the answer to it." And then he finally said to me, he says, "Holy crap, do you know what this means?" And I go, "Yeah, I do. That means that everybody who was ever charged, any money that was ever taken from anyone in a POA court, anyone who was incarcerated from POA court, has to have restitution, and all monies collected from the POA courts has to be returned to the rightful owners." That's exactly what that means. Now, unfortunately, and this is not directed at you at all, Murray, unfortunately, it doesn't matter if you're a doctor, a lawyer, a carpenter, a milkman, it doesn't matter. Okay? We all came up through a system of education that came from the Prussian system, which is specifically designed to educate us for what the state requires us for. Okay? It has nothing to do whatsoever about knowledge. So when people go to school, their first idea is not really to question too hard. It's to learn whatever they're teaching us and to do our exams and get as good a mark as we can so that we can get through whatever system that we're trying to get through, be it whatever we've decided we want to do, without asking any real hard questions. And that therein lies the problem. We accept what we are taught. And, I had a teacher way back in grade whatever, and I was a kid that was never in the house and always was, playing ball or doing whatever. I was a good student in fact that I didn't find any of it difficult. But I had a paper I was supposed to hand in, probably grade 8 or something, and forgot all about it. And my parents had bought this encyclopedia set. And I thought, oh my God, I forgot to do this. So I didn't have time to do it. So the only time I've ever plagiarized anything in my life, I just sat down with the encyclopedia, opened it up, the book of knowledge, and just wrote it down verbatim and handed it in. And the teacher, she says, I got a really lousy mark, which I expected. I expected the teacher to be smart enough to know I didn't write that. And I'm a curious guy, so I could have left that alone and say, okay, she caught me, I get it. But I went and asked the teacher why it was I got such a rotten mark. And I expected the teacher to say, come on, Ronnie, you know you didn't write this. I'm good with that. That's not what the teacher said. The teacher said it's wrong. And what do you mean it's wrong? She said it's wrong. How can it be wrong? I copied it verbatim out of the encyclopedia. Well, it's not the information that's in our book. Well, now we got a problem, teacher. You have a responsibility. We all have a responsibility to find out which one of these is right. And the response from the teacher was, I don't care. This is what we were taught. This is what we were told to teach you, and that's what we're teaching you, right or wrong. And so because we come through this education system and we just end up accepting what's being taught to us, a lot of the stuff that's taught to us may or may not be correct. And that is very obvious in our law system here. You won't find, I don't think you'd find many people, Murray, out there in this province or this country that would not be responsible enough to accept a situation where they caused harm. I don't think people have a certain moral value about them. And if they know they did wrong, then they would like to make it right. And that goes back to the old law. If I walk down the street and I pitch a rock through your window and somebody sees me pitch a rock through your window, it's obvious that I did it. In law, in old law, there would be a jury of my peers for the simplest thing.
You know where jury of peers came from?
No.
Magna Carta.
But also the RCMP now have rated the Magna Carta as a useless rag from the past. They don't even recognize Magna Carta.
Well, they don't have any choice.
Why is that?
Well, the Magna Carta forms basis for a lot of the criminal code. So how can the RCMP say they're not going to pay any attention to the Magna Carta when the Magna Carta, some parts of it are in the criminal code?
But we've moved to the international system now. The Magna Carta is dead. In fact, the Magna Carta was dead before it started. You know, it was, I believe, I could be wrong on this, but I don't think so. I think it was King John, was it not, when the Magna Carta came along? And when he signed that thing, then it was negated off the bat because apparently his lawyers and that said you don't have to abide by that because.
Well, there are different versions of Magna Carta. As far as I understand, there were 4 variations of it over 50 or 100 years or something. But the principal points some of the principal points that were established in it, including trial by jury, have stayed.
Well,
they're still here.
In the old days,
so it's not in Magna Carta, but it's in the criminal code because of Magna Carta. So I'm not sure why the RCMP would want to say that they don't have to apply Magna Carta.
Well, I was a little thrown by that when I saw that, and I thought, okay, this is we are most definitely now moving to international law, and one of the reasons.
Oh no, how's that international law? RCMP.
Well, all of the police are classes, employees of the Queen who've taken oaths of loyalty to the Queen, not the people. They serve and protect the corporation known as the Crown. They don't serve and protect the people. That's not their first motive. That would be an offshoot of it. But their first primary is protecting and serving the Crown, and because they're employees of it. All of the police forces now, if you check it out, are all chiefs of police in this country are members of the Police Chiefs International.
They might be members of the Lions Club International too.
Well, okay, but it's the same.
It doesn't mean. Political philosophy.
I get that and I understand it, but it's basically having to bring it down to the basis of where how our laws and that all came about. And
we could be here for 5 years talking about that.
Well, it's not necessary. I mean, it's a fairly.
Well, I mean, to begin with, you'd be talking about law that you're familiar with and had some connection with. It would be difficult to push that law far. Well, maybe it wouldn't be. I don't know. What about people who live in Alaska, who lived there 600 years ago? They probably had something that might constitute law at that time. Maybe the same for Iceland, or pick an island in the middle of the Pacific. Each of these places has something that we would probably recognize as a form of law. So we've got to be a bit cautious about how far we get out in these generalities here.
Yeah. No. I just wanted we'll get onto some specifics here, but
yeah. Do you have any, I'm still waiting to get my lunch here, Ron.
Okay.
So if you have a specific a listener, I'm quite happy to speak with them about something specific. But I think I'm just about done with political philosophy.
Well, I hate political philosophy. I'm not doing.
Well, that's what I've done for the past hour.
Because I like it. I'm doing it because it's so intertwined with it. There's let me see here.
Did you have a listen? I mean, you can call me back. I'm going to have lunch, but I don't.
Yeah, if I can.
Sure. If you've got a listener calls and the listener wants to discuss something in particular that is something that I would have some clue about, I don't mind discussing it.
Yeah, I'm going through some of this stuff here. Somebody want to know something about the oath. Somebody also says that etymology does not say that lex is legal. Let me see here. I have a gentleman here that I was supposed to bring in. If I can see if he's still online here. Here we go. I'm going to bring in Jimmy Freeland now. He is. He may have some good questions here. Now, he is not from Ontario, but he's just across the water in Michigan. But just before I bring him in, the thing about that I think we need to really wrap our minds around quickly is that the state is above the government, and I don't think anybody's going to quibble with that.
Well, I'm not going to quibble about it. I don't understand it.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, if this gentleman from Michigan has something he wishes to talk about particularly, I'd feel better if I dealt with that rather than questions about whether state is government or government is state.
Okay. I'll just see if I got James here. I know he's there. Just wait for him to hook up here. Are you originally from Kingston, Murray?
Well, I'm from Ontario. It's the only place I've ever lived.
I'm actually from the Ottawa Valley originally. Sure. And, I mean, it's a great province. I mean, it's a beautiful place. There's no ifs, ands, or what's about it. Unfortunately, there seems to be so much negative law being applied now, where people can't, the people up north can't log. They've had their basically their way of making a living shut out from them, and that's unfortunate. And again, I don't think anybody. Are you there, James?
Oh, yeah, that's affirmative.
I mean, that's a great. Oh, there he is. There, James.
Hold on, I got to shut off. Oh,
pardon me?
Sorry about that. I had you running in the background.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay. So we have you on now, right?
Affirmative.
Yeah, okay. So I'd like you to meet Murray Rielly. He's a retired lawyer from Kingston, Ontario. He's a very nice guy.
I've been listening.
And I take you've been listening to the show here a little bit.
Yeah.
But do you have anything specific you would like to ask Murray?
Well, actually, I mean, I don't. I think you've been. It's kind of hard to understand. I don't know. I respect Rielly and Mr. Rielly, and you were telling him things that I mean, you can look at it from both sides of it, but I don't have any specific questions other than the fact that why is it so important for a judge or what do you guys call magistrate to gain the upper hand by trying to fool a person into jurisdiction? because I've seen the game played, and if a judge can't fool you into giving up your jurisdiction, they'll call a recess and they'll get everybody out of the courtroom to address it.
Yeah, that was my experience.
I'm not quite clear on what the jurisdiction question is there.
Well, let me try to put it this way, Murray. I went to court, and it was.
Well, no, it's James's inquiry, so I'd rather hear it from him.
Okay.
The fact that that if a judge can't get you to answer a question, a specific question right at the middle, right at the beginning, when your information is being read, for instance, they ask you if you understand. There are ways, because I've seen people use these methods of not answering the question, of always answering the question with a question, and the fact that I've seen people convene court of records or whatever they want to call it. So I mean, I understand that, because I've been, listen, sir, I've been, arrested and in the system since I was 12, man. I know, I understand the system and the illusion of due process. But laws are selectively enforced, and and you got to know that, right?
Well, I mean, there's certainly an element of truth to what you say, in the sense that whether or not a police officer or an environment protection guy or a securities agent or somebody, there's certainly an element of discretion where a lot of these people have as to whether or not they're going to start a charge. So the policeman sees you doing 122 in a 100-mile or 100-kilometer zone. That policeman can say, well, I choose not to go ahead with that, and you're doing something that is over the limit anyway. So there is the discretion there, but if the whole thing did go to trial, and the judge is sitting there and the judge hears the evidence and the judge says, well, I'm convinced that you were doing 122 in a zone that you're only supposed to be doing 100, but I elect not to apply the law. I think that's two different situations. The discretion may come with the original officer, but I don't know that the ultimate judge can say, I choose not to apply the law.
I hear him say that that the Constitution has no place in the courtroom continuously. Well, of course, in your country you don't have a Constitution, but we do.
Yes.
And so I do understand that our legal systems are different, but when you get down to it, like Ron has done his research, it's the law of the sea. It's admiralty law, and it's contractual. And I've seen people opt out, and this isn't to say, sir, that laws or rules or morals don't apply to you, because you can play a nifty word game, and get around certain contractual obligations that your birth certificate signifies. But it is to say that, that each man on planet Earth should and absolutely is by natural law a sovereign individual. And I've never seen any evidence from government, and I'll go to, some of these anarchist view, that just by virtue of the fact that I am physically present in a certain land or geographical area, that laws and statutes apply to me. No evidence that there's an authority over me as long as I'm not harming another individual. I wish listen, guys. Mr. Rielly, I have to apologize because I've been in and out of the house. I do a show right after this, and I've been sort of not really paying too close of attention. I'd hoped to come on a little earlier. We could have engaged a little bit. So. Oh no,
it's the first time I've got a bit of a look-see into what your thinking process is, which, as I understand it, would be that because you were a self-created. Whether you want to call yourself created by God or not is entirely up to you, but you're a self-standing individual. Therefore, nobody, unless you harm somebody else, nobody and no government anywhere should have any effect on your activities unless you are going to go out and effect harm on somebody.
Or cause damage.
So, I mean, that's a viewpoint. I'm not You know, if you
to be certain, I don't operate under that. I live in a society, and I operate under the rules.
Yes.
You know, purely, mostly out of convenience, because they have a gun.
Well,
as far as the rules,
I mean, the same rule that a lot of people may object to is also the same rule that would say that, you know, if you get your foot, at least in Ontario, and it probably applies in Michigan also, if you had some crazy person blow your left foot off in Ontario and you go to the hospital, there's an excellent chance that somebody there is going to be legally obliged to do something about it, even though they're a self-standing individual and they shouldn't be required to do this sort of thing. There's a trade-off there too.
Well, yeah, but under natural law, you know, it's your duty as another man to help an individual in need. I mean, if you're going under God's law or the law, you know, however you want to put it. And I don't advocate. See, there's a movement here in America that's the sovereign. They've given a name and they found a couple of violent individuals, you know, to put in the forefront to say, you know, that this is what a person who doesn't believe that, you know, that they should have to go through life with the worry that they're going to be molested by the state and, you know, for a late payment or for whatever, if they go through their life as a sovereign individual. And that does, yeah. I obviously, listen, man, I obviously, you know, I believe if you play, you pay, obviously.
Yeah,
you're
still in Michigan.
Pardon me?
You still choose to live in Michigan?
No, I live in upstate New York.
Oh, sorry. I thought that understood. In any event, Michigan or New York, you still choose to stay there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I live, and I do follow the rules. And obviously, even the rules that I despise and I hate. I mean, you know, if I find a rule or something intolerable, I break it, and I understand the consequence, the risk involved.
Yeah.
So I truly am sovereign, even though I do have to play the game.
Well, you'd be hard.
You maintain the not quite true, but I mean, you might decide that if you don't like what you're seeing in New York, you can pack up and move some other place.
Amen, brother. Testify.
Nobody. Now, I don't think anybody, as far as I know, nobody's going to stop you from moving from New York. Now, when you get to the new border and want in, they may say, we don't want you here, which is a whole different argument, but I don't think anybody's going to stop you moving from New York.
No. Well, my argument is against violence, but I didn't actually hear the entire context of what you and Ron have been discussing up until now. I mean, these are just, and I have just very basic ideas of these principles. Like I said, man, I grew up thinking that, you know, I was I broke the law, so I was being punished, and I paid my debt, and everything's just fine and dandy. But really, it's not about justice. It's about generating revenue for the state. Really, these new, you know, we've got 6 million laws and statutes here in America, and I don't understand. I don't quite. I mean, if you go, I don't understand what you and Ron were actually talking about. If you were debating, you know, lawful or legal, I think that's what you guys were talking about, right?
Well, I was asking for explanations of what the differences were, but I mean, those are questions of philosophy and politics, and that's not something I'm very well versed in either.
Oh, me either.
I'm sort of a ratchet set fellow. I like to get stuff figured out and solved, not at that level.
Well, it's important because
if I could just put this to you guys, and this should cover both of your situations here. I went to court, and the justice said, you know, you have been charged. And I don't pretend to be, I am not what they class as a free man. I'm a researcher. That's it. Okay. And when I asked the judge, I said, well, I'm here, but who else are you referring to? And this is from my own research. And the judge says, what are you talking about? Well, you is plural. So obviously you're looking for me and someone else. Well, that didn't go very far. He didn't answer. He didn't want to talk about it. And then they pushed ahead, and the Crown was standing there, and he was not moving any papers around. He was standing, waiting to get into it. And so then they said, "You have been charged with driving under suspension." And I said, "Who was charged? Me or the title?" At that point, the Crown got really haywire and started rifling through his papers and started interrupting the judge. And, "Excuse me, Your Honor, whoa, excuse me." And the judge is trying to move forward, but the judge finally looked at the Crown and said, What is it you want?" And the Crown says, "We don't have any evidence." And I said, "Well, fine, then it's discharged." So I went home and I checked out with the POA people, and they said, "No, they set a new trial." I said, "Well, you can't bring someone to court with no evidence." And I phoned the Attorney General's office. He said, "That's correct. They can't do that." And I went to court again, and this time the policeman who had lied in his evidence to get me into court, I asked him about his notes. He said they had his notes. But I said, "Well, you're not starting in the right place. We have to go back to where this began last August. Do you have those notes?" And he said, "No." And the judge then got all messed up and stood up and started shaking his hands in the air, headed stage left, and ran out of the court and yelling, "Set a new trial." Now I phoned up the Attorney General's office again. I said, "That's twice. I should have been discharged." "Well, yes." The third time I went back to court, I tried to talk to the Crown, 3 different Crowns, 3 different days, and he said, I said, I already talked to the Attorney General's office. They said, "You have to discharge this from square one." And he said, "Do you have that in writing?" "Why do I need that in writing? Do you not know the law?" And he said, "Well, I'm going ahead with it anyways." At that point, I was assaulted by police. Then I phoned the police on the police, because it was 2 different forces, and they waited long enough for the one that assaulted me to leave the court. They came in, and 2 officers came from the OPP, because the other one was a town policeman, the one that assaulted me, and said, "We're here for the alleged assault." And I said, "Well, it's not alleged." And the lady came out of the courtroom. I have no idea who she was. And she came out and she said, "It was not alleged. It was an assault. I witnessed it." I asked the policeman, and I said, "Fine, take this lady's statement," of which they refused to do. What they did was say, "Well, if you want, we'll take your statement, but you have to come to the police station." And the lady said, "I'm not going to your police station." And I said, No, you have a pad. If you don't have a pad, I'll get a pen and a paper, and you can go sit down over there in an empty chair and take the lady's statement. And the police are going, "We made our offer. You accept our offer, or that's it." Okay? So at that point, I said, I had enough of this, right? And I went back into the court, and I told the Crown, I said, "Look, I've had it. I'm out of here, okay? I am not putting up with this nonsense anymore." And I was assaulted the second time I was in court as well. And I left. And then I find out that I get a notice that I now have what started as a $135 ticket is now $1,600 plus reinstatement fees of another $150 or $200. For something that the Crown Attorney's Office said had been chucked out of court day one. So this is what's going on in our courts here, and as JJ said, when you go into the court and you try to ask a simple question, all hell's going to break loose. You either go in and completely submit, or you're in for a rough ride.
Well, forgive me for interrupting, and it should be that way. Most laws and statutes are written by lawyers, and they're commercial in nature, and they absolutely and truly are, and at the end of the day, for generating revenue, and that's wrong. And there are ways to incorporate the natural law, even if you're a lawyer. and part of the bar. You can still. I mean, you have to look into this, man. The thing of it is the information is out there, and the point that I like to make is that it's not about trying to get out of your obligations as a member of a community or a society. It's to make certain that government, whether it's local, state, or federal, can't act as God and just come in and take everything away from you. And even due process has kind of become a joke anymore. And so you have to. And you say, well, there's, what about all these criminals? Well, here's something that you should understand is 7% of all death row inmates they found are there falsely convicted. And if that's just not in the death row, what is our legal system? How just is our legal system, your legal system? And these are the discussions that are important. Whether you think that I'm nuts or not, I still believe in them, and these are discussions going forward for the next sort of legal system. Because, 400 or 500 years ago when the term, due process or habeas corpus were thought up, that was a step in a new direction, even though, in my opinion, you just exchanged a king for a municipality and a group of bureaucrats. It was still a change, and I believe that these discussions, Mr. Rielly, are very, very important just going forward, because they're really just trying to breed and school philosophy and higher thinking out of the youth of America. I don't know how it is there in Canada, but, our schools are more interested in teaching kids about, sexual orientations and tolerance than, how to evolve. We don't even teach the arts. We fund these sex education classes, but can't fund shop class or music anymore in my school. But we got a $3 million football field. So I have to I hope that I brought just a little bit of enlightenment here. I understand both sides of this. Listen, I call myself a victim of the system, but I broke the laws. Starting at the age of 12, I got sent away, and I spent my life. We used to call it life on the installment plan, Mr. Rielly, and I'm sure you've seen it. People who are either in custody, on supervision, or, they spend very little time out on the streets without an actual charge or somebody, So I'll leave you with that, guys. Ron, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure talking to
Thank you,
Mr.
James.
Rielly.
I understand the frustrations with trying to deal with governments and authorities that seem to be overreaching and pretty narrowly focused a lot of the time.
Absolutely. That's why going forward, philosophic discussions about law, understanding, and justice, true justice, and dignity are important. So thanks, Ron, and I have to call and get my other guests ready for the show.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Sorry to
thanks, James. I think what just happened there was that Murray, we are all basically, I think, on the same page. And you are a man that believes in justice. And I think what we're trying to discuss is justice kind of losing its way somewhat. And that has to do with a lot of these new so-called laws and some of the old laws that come in. I don't think, like listening to JJ, I mean, he has no problem fessing up if he's done something wrong. But it's what's going on now is, can you go to a court and get justice? Is it weighted too much to one side now? I think is really what's causing so many people so much trouble.
Well, that works both ways, doesn't it?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
It works. There's an event, it goes to trial, and something happens, there's a result, and the person who's going to jail says, well, there was no justice. But you go to a different trial takes place, and the person is, the accused person is acquitted, and then the friends and relatives of the victim say there's no justice.
I understand that completely.
So it's
And well, where's the consistency, really, right? When you know,
I mean,
things happen.
these are larger questions that I'm not the philosopher.
I understand that.
I'm a mechanic, a wood chopper. That's it.
Someone contacts you because they have a problem that needs to be dealt with, right?
Yes.
And then you are dealing with it within the context of what's written on the books, right?
As best as can be done. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I mean you are
including the client.
Right.
You know, if a client came in with a problem, and I thought to myself, well, you know, this whole thing can be resolved within a week, but they're going to have to pay $100 fine.
Mm-hmm.
However, if this client wants to do this, that, and the other thing, and then wants to learn this, that, and the other, and deal with something else, and maybe deal with it in 18 months' time, that's a different kind of a result. That if the present needs of the client always direct the consultation that you give to the client too.
Right. But it's all within the context of what's been legislated, right?
Well, what's legislated either specifically or by common law principles, yes.
Right. So you as a lawyer are contained within that, right? And I think what JJ is saying is that we need to look deeper into it. Like what my understanding of law when I was a young guy, and you know, we would get a ticket for whatever, squealing the tires or whatever. I mean, just stupid stuff. I didn't get thrown in jail for anything weird. When I used to go to court, it was basically, you know, you were charged with this, so you know, we can give you $100 fine or whatever, and say, fine, whatever, here's your $100. And that's basically was my understanding of law. But as time went on, and I started looking at different things, I was looking at different things long before I got looking at law. And it seemed that there was more questions being asked all the time. I'm gonna. Can you hang 1 second, Murray, please?
Yeah, I'm.
I'm sorry about that, Murray. I just have to call somebody into the show. They got, for some reason, they can't get on the regular phone line, so I'll just have to call them in. But no, I do believe that we're on the same page. But I do also believe that I'm
also looking at my lunch here, Ron. I was
well. If you can hang with
calls.
if you can hang with me for 5 more minutes, we'll be good to go here. I think the biggest problem we have is that there's a lot of questions that we all need to take a look at, because I don't believe very many people, and it's very time consuming, Murray. I understand that. It has consumed an awful lot of my time. It's been an interesting learning process. But we all have to do our due diligence to make sure that we fully understand the system that we're involved in. I don't think, like JJ said, I'm certainly not one of those people, and I think there's a lot of frustration out there that people are going, what the hell's going on here? At the same time, these are not people that want to just basically thumb their nose at the law. right? These are not renegades or anything. These are very serious people who do believe in law, but they're questioning, actually, in a lot of cases, the actual lawfulness or the administration of the law. They're becoming very frustrated by it. You should be able to go into a courtroom and lay things out on the table and come to a reasonable conclusion for it. That would work very well. So I actually
have reached 61376606265. Please leave your message after the tone. Press 1 to replay this message. Press 2 to erase and begin again. Press pound when complete.
Anyways, I guess the question.
Please enter a command, or your call will be ended. Press 1.
I think what I'm trying to really find out from you is, after all those years from '76 up to last year, have you seen things in the court system that you are finding more negative than they were maybe back when you first started in law?
Hello?
Hello, Murray?
Hello? Yes?
Yeah. I got Chris on here. I think he's one of your, he's a fellow Kingstonite, I guess.
That could be, yes.
Are you there, Chris?
I am.
Okay. How are you?
Good.
And you have a question for Murray?
Well, I do. I have some concerns about how Mr. Rielly is being attacked, and he's been brought on the show.
Well, I don't really see that much attack in there. Actually, I saw a lot of compliments that Murray came on the show, and I saw a lot of compliments. I will always, I would think that the positive side of Murray being on the show is far outweighs the negative side of it. And, we both knew this coming in. I find this a very difficult show because it's trying to keep this in a position where Murray is treated with respect, and Murray has been very good to come on the show. And
well, what I've found is a lot of rhetoric denouncing him because he's a lawyer, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. Unfortunately, what people don't understand is what Murray is doing is he's just giving the side that he knows, and that was the idea.
And that continues.
If people don't like lawyers, I get it. I do get it. But he is just saying what he's been taught and what he knows, and I think I feel he's been very professional at what he's done. And people don't like when he starts questioning what we talk about, and he starts asking questions.
That is absolutely natural, Chris. Okay, and I get what you're saying, right? And Murray has been, I really appreciate Murray coming on the show. And I knew going into the show that we were going to have certain problems because of the two. Murray is a lawyer. And Murray, this is what I was just saying before I brought
he's asking you good questions.
Murray, as a lawyer, doing his job as a lawyer, is confined.
Well, no, I'm not doing my job as a lawyer. My job as a lawyer is to get paid for helping somebody through their problem.
Right, but within the context,
my function here is just listening or trying to listen to a problem and figuring out how it might be dealt with. And there seems to be a lot of philosophy and politics that have taken the field largely without any particular situations to discuss. I mean, if people have difficulties in dealing with whatever it is they feel is offending them within the legal system, then I don't know if the best thing is to talk to me about it. They should be figuring out how to change the system.
There you go, and that is the message. And this is why I found that I understand we have the philosophy thing and we have the legal thing and the law thing and all that. It's a very, very broad subject, and it's very difficult.
It is, yes.
I understand all that, and I really do
and I mean, in order to change the system, somebody has the person who wishes to change the system or change the unfair result of the system. Somebody somewhere has to start looking for what it is specifically that has to change.
There you go.
Where does the problem originate?
And
it's a completely different solution. And if the problem originates in a local bylaw or the criminal code or the Constitution, they're completely different solution routes that one might consider.
Well, what I try to explain to people, Murray, is that, whining and complaining about a politician or whining and complaining about this or that, both the problem and the solution you will find in the mirror. Okay? We are basically, in the end, we're the ones that are responsible for where we are, because we allowed ourselves to be put in a particular position, and we individually are the only ones that can change anything. So, I've said this for years and years and years. I tried to get people to run in municipal elections. If you are unhappy, then you must go get control of the local council, because otherwise you're just pitching rocks at the castle walls. And if you're not prepared to stand up and to put yourself out there and to do your due diligence and put in the time and the effort to make the changes necessary, then you really don't have a lot of reason to be complaining about it.
Yeah.
And it's true, we do need a lot of change, but the ones you're complaining about are not going to change it for you. We have that responsibility. If we're not happy with what we see, then we have to change it, which means go look at it.
Change it or move.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly. It's true. I get a lot of people.
If somebody doesn't like the legal system or the law where they are living, why don't they pack up and go to a country in South America or Scandinavia or take an island in the Pacific?
Exactly, and that's basically what it boils down to, is that, and it also boils down to what I keep saying to people, is that we all came through an education system that was not designed to benefit us, and so many people in so many realms of life believe things that are not necessarily true, and that's simply because they didn't do the background checks, they didn't look at the history, and they didn't ask any hard questions. And that way, it is very easy to manipulate the public. But then again, that becomes our fault, right? That's our problem. And if we're going to
at some time you're old enough to find out what it is you really should be thinking about.
Right. And then the responsibility lays in our laps alone.
Well, I'm looking at the close coming of lunchtime here, Ron. So I think I'm going to want to depart unless there's something very specific.
Yeah, you have no idea, and I know when I told my wife, Murray, going into this show, I said this is going to be tough. This is going to be a tough show. It worked out fine as far as I'm concerned. We had an interesting discussion about several things. And again, I really appreciate you coming on, because it's such a broad subject to deal with, and I appreciate you taking the time here today. To
Murray,
work
Hello.
through this.
Hey, Mr. Rielly.
Yes, sir.
Before you go, there's just been some. The fact that you were a lawyer in the bar. There's some contentious people, and that's okay. I don't mind that, and we're going to take a lot of flack for it. I appreciate what you've done, and thank you for coming on the show. Can you give a definition? What I don't know. This might be too complicated to do in a simple sentence or two, but is there a definition that you can split between the legal and the lawful?
Not anything that everybody would be happy with.
Yeah.
That's for another day, I think. Right now,
I mean,
now,
just on a very broad, and I don't know which one would apply which way, but I mean, you've got what the books say, and you've got what common sense or morality would direct. So one might be illegal, the other might be lawful. That's that's take a simple example. If somebody gets out into most parts of Michigan or New York State or Ontario, and they take their car out and they're driving on the right hand side of the road, that's completely legal and lawful. They get into a car and say, "Well, I'm just going to drive down the left hand side of the road." Is that illegal or unlawful? I don't know. It's the one is there's nothing wrong if they were in England in doing that, but doing it here, it's either legal or lawful to drive on the left hand side of the road in England or Ontario, and it's either legal or lawful not to do it in one place or the other. And somebody's going to have to figure out what the two things are, but one area certainly is what the books and what the clearly plain rules say is one, and the other side is going to be, well, it may be what's in the books, but that's not completely fair and that's not just, and whether the one is lawful and one is legal, I don't know. I can't think that far and fast.
Okay, we're out of time here, Murray.
Yep. Okay.
You have yourself a great lunch. I appreciate you coming on. It's been insightful, and we all have to continue, improving our knowledge base.
Yeah.
And we all have to decide what it is we want to live in, under, and everything else. And again, that responsibility lays in each of our hands to make sure make it happen. So, Murray, again, thank you very much. Have a great lunch.
All right.
And
thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, Murray and Ron.
All right. Bye.
Okay, Murray's gone now. We just got, or am I off the air here? No, I'm still in here, I guess. Anyways, I want to thank everybody for listening. This has been a very difficult show to do. And it shows the knowledge system, the education system, okay? Love him or leave him. Murray was honest through the show. He does not have, he came through. He's a lawyer. I get that. And that's what he was trained to do. And unfortunately, the lawyers are trained in the legal system, not the law system. And that's what they make their living at. And so that's just the way it is. So yeah, that's good. I'm still alive for a minute or so here. It must have been tough for Murray to come on here. We discussed some stuff. Hopefully he will continue his knowledge quest, which I'm sure he will. He's retired now. I'm sure there was questions asked today that has perked his interest, and that's what this is all about, working together. And that's how we're going to win at this thing. And I'll leave it with this. Murray is a lawyer, and he understands that law and legal are mixed. But we know that legal is not law, and law is not legal. Anyways, thanks everybody for listening. I hear music. We've got help here. We'll be back here next Sunday. Until then, everybody be good, keep learning. Take care. Bye-bye.
don't care. Caesar shit, force them out, fuck them back, it's only for them.